We've got a juicy one for you today, so buckle up and make sure you stick around for the whole ride. And hey, let us know where you're tuning in from. We always love hearing from our viewers. Now, let's dive into today's story. It's one filled with twists, turns, and a little bit of heartbreak. But trust me, by the end, you'll see just how karma has a way of catching up with the people who think they're untouchable. The year is 2022. We're in Los Angeles, the city of stars, sunshine, and a lot of secrets. The story we're about to unfold takes us deep into the world of high-powered executives, expensive homes, and corporate scandals. This is a tale of betrayal, deception, and a man who's about to find out just how far people will go to protect their own selfish desires. But this story isn't just about one person's downfall. It's about a domino effect that changes everything for everyone involved. Meet Daniel Greenfield. Now, Daniel's your average guy in some ways, or at least he was. He's 38, lives in a nice, not too big but not too small house in the suburbs. He's got a solid job in the marketing department at a tech firm, a wife named Amber who is stunningly beautiful, and 2 young kids who he absolutely adores. He's one of those guys who, from the outside, you'd think has everything, the picture-perfect life. But here's the thing about Daniel. His life isn't as perfect as it seems. Sure, on the surface, everything looks great. He's climbing up the corporate ladder, his kids are well-behaved, and Amber is gorgeous. But as he sits at his desk late at night, looking over sales figures and budgets, there's a creeping feeling in his chest. Something's not right. And no, it's not just the numbers on his computer screen that are starting to get blurry after a long day at work. It's something deeper. A growing sense of unease about his marriage, his family, and the life he's been working so hard to build. You see, Daniel's always been the type to trust. Maybe that's his downfall. He's the kind of guy who believes in the good in people even when there's no reason to. He doesn't second-guess Amber, never questions her. Why would he? She's been by his side for over 10 years. They've been through the highs and lows of life together. Sure, she's been distant lately, a little preoccupied, spending more time out with friends, or working late, but Daniel chalked it up to the stress of their busy lives. Amber's been juggling a demanding job as an interior designer and the responsibilities of raising 2 kids, so he didn't think much of it. But here's the catch, Amber's been keeping a secret. And not just any secret, but a secret that could unravel everything Daniel thought he knew about his wife, his marriage, and even the life they've built together. But Daniel, being the trusting man he is, has no idea that he's about to walk right into the mess of his life. Let's talk about Amber. She's the classic beautiful but misunderstood type. She's got a smile that could light up a room, and she knows it. Amber's always been the center of attention, the woman everyone admires and envies. But beneath that perfect exterior lies someone with a darker side. Amber's always had her eyes on bigger things. She's always wanted more, but never in the obvious ways. She's not interested in fame or fortune, but in the things that money and status can buy: designer clothes, exotic vacations, and a life that's full of excitement. She's always had this quiet dissatisfaction, this desire for something else, something better than what she had. And when she met David, the CEO of a competitor firm, everything changed. David Mercer. Now, if you don't know David, you're about to. He's the type of guy who commands attention the moment he walks into a room. Tall, handsome, and loaded with confidence, he's the kind of man who gets what he wants when he wants it. David doesn't play by the rules, he makes them. He's got a reputation for being charming, powerful, and just a little bit dangerous. Some say he's ruthless in the boardroom and in his personal life. He's always had a way of drawing people in, but never getting too close. That's how he operates, and it's worked well for him. Until he met Amber. Amber and David first met at a charity gala. One of those fancy events where everyone wears their best suits and gowns, and it's all about who you know, not what you're doing. It was a whirlwind. The chemistry was instant. David was captivated by Amber's beauty and her sharp mind, and Amber, well, she was drawn to David's power and his ability to make things happen. Within weeks, they were texting, meeting up, and finding excuses to spend more time together. What started as a harmless friendship quickly turned into something more, something dangerous. So, how does Daniel find out about this? Well, it's not a matter of if, but when. It all starts when Daniel gets a call one evening, around 10 p.m., from one of his old friends, Mark, who works in the same industry. Mark's been working on some corporate projects with David, and he's got a bit of an inside track on the guy's behavior. Mark, as casual as he is about the whole thing, lets slip that David's been seen out a lot recently with a woman who fits Amber's description, and the two of them seem awfully close. First, Daniel brushes it off. No way. Amber's not the type. She's too busy with their kids, their home, her work. She'd never do that to him. But as the days go on, Daniel can't shake the feeling that something's wrong. So what does he do? The most typical thing you'd expect from someone who's been in a comfortable marriage for over a decade. He dismisses it. Until one evening, he walks in on a conversation between Amber and her best friend, Tiffany. He doesn't mean to overhear. He's just walking past the living room, where Amber's on the phone, speaking in a tone that doesn't sound like her usual cheerful self. The conversation is hushed, but Daniel hears enough to know something's off. "I can't keep doing this," Amber says quietly. "I can't keep hiding it from him. He's gonna find out soon, and I don't know what I'll do if he does." "Find out what?" Daniel's heart races. He freezes in the doorway, trying to process what he just heard. But before he can react, Amber hangs up the phone and turns around. Her expression shifts instantly, almost like she knew he was there the whole time. It's the kind of look that sends chills down his spine. Amber stands up, casually smoothing her hair back, as if nothing happened. "Hey, hon. What's up?" Daniel doesn't say anything right away. His mind is spinning, the words tumbling over each other in his head. "What was that about?" he finally asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Amber seems to brush it off. "Oh, nothing. Just some work stuff. You know how it is." But Daniel isn't convinced. He knows something's wrong. And this is where things really start to get interesting. The seed of doubt has been planted. From this point on, Daniel begins to notice more things. Subtle changes in Amber's behavior, the way she reacts when he mentions David's name, the way her phone lights up with messages that she quickly hides when he walks into the room. And let's not forget those late nights she's been spending at the office, always coming home looking, well, different. But more on that later. So, Daniel does what any husband who suspects something's up might do. He starts investigating. But what he doesn't know is that this is just the beginning of a journey that's going to unravel everything he thought he knew about his wife, his marriage, and the company he's worked so hard for. This is where things begin to get a little sticky. Stay tuned. You won't believe how this all plays out. Welcome back, folks. If you've made it this far, you're in for a treat. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, now's a great time to do so. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Go ahead and drop a comment below too. We'd love to hear your thoughts on how things are unfolding so far. Alright, let's dive back in. So where were we? Oh yes. Daniel Greenfield has just overheard something he wasn't supposed to. He's feeling uneasy about his marriage. And with that one conversation, it seems like everything is starting to unravel. At this point, Daniel's mind is racing. He doesn't want to believe Amber could be cheating, but the pieces are starting to fall into place. That seed of doubt he'd been trying to ignore? Well, it's officially sprouted, and there's no going back now. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. This moment doesn't automatically lead to some dramatic confrontation. Not yet. Anyway, Daniel's the kind of guy who likes to think things through, carefully weigh his options. He's not the type to make rash decisions, so instead of confronting Amber immediately, he takes a step back. The thing is, though, this only gives Amber more time to hide whatever she's doing. And she's definitely hiding something. For the next couple of days, Daniel watches her closely, but she's got a way of dodging his suspicions. She's always just out of reach. Leaving early for meetings, texting quietly on her phone when he's not looking, and coming home late with the same rehearsed smile. Still, there's something in her eyes, a flicker of guilt that Daniel can't ignore. But he's careful not to push too hard. Not yet. Now, let's talk about Amber for a minute. As we mentioned before, Amber isn't just any ordinary wife. She's the kind of woman who knows exactly how to work a room, how to keep people at arm's length, and how to manipulate situations to her advantage. She's never been a villain, not exactly. She's just selfish. Not in a loud, obvious way, but in the kind of way that makes you question her motives. When Daniel married her, he was in love with the idea of the perfect couple, and Amber played that role so well. But beneath that perfect facade, there's always been a hunger for more. A hunger that wasn't satisfied by Daniel's love or the life they built together. Enter David Mercer. As Daniel's suspicions start to bubble up, we also get a closer look at David. Now, David's no angel, far from it. This is a guy who knows exactly what he's doing. He's used to getting what he wants, whether that's in business or in his personal life. The man is sharp, calculating, and as charming as they come. But that charm is all a facade. David's a master manipulator, and he's been playing the game for years. He doesn't see people as partners or equals. He sees them as tools to get what he wants. And right now, Amber is just that, a tool. But Amber doesn't see it that way. She believes David is different. She thinks he genuinely cares about her, and that's part of the allure. He tells her what she wants to hear. He compliments her on everything, from her looks to her ambition. He makes her feel special in a way that Daniel doesn't, and that's the problem. So, when David starts whispering sweet nothings in her ear, Amber starts to believe him. She starts to believe that she deserves more. And the more she buys into David's promises, the further she drifts away from Daniel. But remember, folks, things are never as they seem. While Amber is falling for David's charm, Daniel is quietly investigating. He starts doing a little digging on David, using his connections at work and in the industry. He finds out that David's firm has been going through some serious financial trouble, which might explain why he's been so charming lately. But even more interesting is the pattern of behavior Daniel starts to uncover. David's been playing fast and loose with the company's resources, trying to cover up some shady dealings. And the more Daniel looks into it, the more he starts to piece things together. Amber's been helping David with these shady deals, cooking the books, covering up some questionable transactions, and even funneling money to off-the-books accounts. Daniel's world is beginning to crash down around him, but he's still not ready to confront her. So what does Daniel do next? Well, he takes a different approach. Instead of confronting Amber right away, he decides to play it cool. He begins to subtly turn up the heat on her, asking questions here and there, bringing up small things he's noticed. He plays the concerned husband, not letting her know just how much he knows. This backfires, though. Amber begins to get defensive. The guilt she's been suppressing starts to seep through the cracks, and she begins to act out. Not just with Daniel, but with David as well. Here's where things start to get interesting, folks. While Amber's trying to keep her secrets hidden, Daniel begins to notice a shift in David's behavior. David's usually all business, but suddenly, he's showing up at the office more often, trying to charm his way into meetings that have nothing to do with him. He starts to act like he's got something to prove, trying to win favor with everyone, including Daniel. At first, Daniel doesn't know what to make of it. But soon, he realizes that David's trying to cover his tracks. The more Daniel digs into the financial records, the more he uncovers. And it's not pretty. But as much as Daniel starts to unravel this web of lies, there's a part of him that's still clinging to the idea that maybe, just maybe, Amber isn't as far gone as he thinks. He wants to believe that she's still the woman he fell in love with. So he waits. He keeps up the act. He stays calm. But the more time goes by, the more obvious it becomes that Amber's not the same person anymore. She's changed, and not for the better. And here's the kicker, folks. Daniel gets a phone call that turns everything on its head. It's from a mutual friend of his and Amber's, someone he hasn't spoken to in a while. This friend, Chris, has been hearing whispers around town. And he doesn't just give Daniel the usual gossip. No, Chris drops a bombshell. Chris tells Daniel that he's seen Amber out with David, a lot. They've been spotted at high-end restaurants, at exclusive events, and even at a private yacht party in Malibu. The worst part? They've been seen acting very affectionate with each other. Publicly. Now Daniel's heart is pounding. He can't believe it. All this time, he's been trying to convince himself that he's just imagining things, that his suspicions are unfounded. But this phone call changes everything. Amber has been cheating on him. There's no longer any doubt. But how does Daniel react to this new information? You might think he'd immediately confront her, but that's not his style. Instead, he decides to do something different. He decides to confront David first. And this is where the tension really starts to build. Stay tuned, folks. The showdown between Daniel and David is coming, and it's going to be a wild one. Alright folks, welcome back. If you're still with us, then buckle up because things are about to get real intense. In case you haven't already, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This story is heating up, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think of how Daniel is handling everything so far. Now, let's talk about the escalation. It's time for Daniel to make his move. After that phone call from his friend Chris, Daniel is done waiting around. All those feelings of doubt and confusion he'd been harboring, gone. This is no longer about saving his marriage. This is about justice. Justice for himself and for his kids, who don't deserve to be caught in the middle of Amber's betrayal. And that's when he decides to take action. Instead of confronting Amber right away, Daniel sets his sights on David. He wants to confront the man who's been pulling the strings in the shadows, the man who's been manipulating Amber and, by extension, manipulating his entire life. So, Daniel arranges a meeting, and it's a meeting that David won't see coming. Daniel chooses a quiet, upscale coffee shop for their meeting. Not a public place, but not too private either. A place where David's used to making deals, where he feels comfortable. Daniel arrives early, sitting in a corner booth, watching as the clock ticks closer to the time they agreed to meet. His heart's pounding, but he's calm. He has to be. He's been thinking about this moment for days, planning every word, every gesture. He knows what's at stake. And then David walks in. As always, he's dressed to impress. A perfectly tailored suit, a cocky grin on his face. He doesn't even know why he's here, at least not yet. He slides into the seat across from Daniel with a casual air, as if this is just another routine business meeting. He hasn't noticed the way Daniel's eyes are fixed on him, how his body is rigid with barely contained anger. David leans back in his chair, sizing up Daniel. "You look a little tense, Greenfield. You're usually so composed," he says with a smirk. "What's going on?" Daniel doesn't waste time with pleasantries. He's already too far gone for that. Instead, he slides a file across the table toward David. "You know why I'm here," Daniel says, his voice steady but sharp. David glances at the file, his smirk faltering for just a moment. He picks it up, flips it open, and immediately his face changes. There's a flicker of recognition, followed by something like unease. Daniel can tell he's not sure what exactly he's walked into, but he knows something's off. This is no longer a casual meeting. This is the moment David's been avoiding, the moment he can no longer hide behind his charm. This, Daniel continues, his tone getting colder, is a record of everything. Everything Amber and you have been doing behind my back. The dinners, the trips, the lies. And the worst part? The financial games you've been playing with Riverside. I got it all, David. Everything. David tries to play it cool, but it's clear from the twitch of his jaw that he's rattled. He sets the file down slowly, trying to regain his composure. "You really think this is going to change anything? That you can just throw around accusations like this and expect it to stick?" He laughs, but it's hollow. "You're just some guy trying to play in a game way out of your league." But Daniel isn't backing down. "Oh, I'm in the game, David, and I'm playing it better than you ever will. You thought you could use my wife to get what you wanted. You thought you could mess with the wrong guy. But you're wrong." The words hang in the air, thick with tension. For a moment, neither man speaks. David is trying to process, and Daniel is staring him down, a mix of anger and determination in his eyes. The calm facade Daniel's been holding onto is cracking. He knows what he's about to do could change everything, but it feels right. It feels like the only way to take control back. Then David does something unexpected. He leans forward, his eyes narrowing with that familiar calculating look. "You think you've got me figured out? Think again. I'm not scared of you, Greenfield, and I'm definitely not scared of your little file. What you don't understand is that all of this, he gestures toward the file, is just the tip of the iceberg. You're not playing with someone you can intimidate. Daniel's heart skips a beat. What does David mean by that? Could it be true? Is there more going on here than Daniel realizes? David leans back again, his tone shifting to one that's almost sympathetic. You've got a good thing going, Daniel. You've got a family, a nice house, a job. You don't want to mess that up, do you? Because once you start down this road, there's no coming back. You'll lose everything. Everything. Your wife, your job, your kids. You think you're the good guy in all of this? I hate to break it to you, but you're not. You're just another pawn in a much bigger game. For the first time in this entire confrontation, Daniel feels a cold chill run down his spine. The stakes have just gotten even higher. There's something David knows that Daniel doesn't, and David's only hinting at it. But Daniel's not about to back down now. He leans forward, his fists clenched.
No.
You're the one who's about to lose everything. David's smile falters. For a moment, Daniel sees the mask slip, just a fraction of a second where David's arrogance is replaced with a flicker of uncertainty. And that's all Daniel needs. But before he can say anything more, David stands up abruptly. This meeting's over, he declares, his voice cold and final. You've got no idea what you're dealing with.
No idea.
But you will. He turns to leave, but not before adding, you'll regret this. But Daniel isn't done. As David turns to walk away, Daniel calls after him, his voice cutting through the tense silence like a knife. You might be able to walk away, David, but don't think I won't come for you. You've made a mistake, and I'm not the kind of guy who lets those slide. David pauses for just a moment, his back still turned. There's a long, pregnant silence. Then, without turning around, he responds, We'll see about that, Greenfield. And just like that, David's gone. Now here's the thing, folks. If you think that's the end of the confrontation, you'd be wrong. This is just the beginning. Daniel may have thrown down the gauntlet, but David isn't going to just walk away quietly. No, David is as dangerous as they come, and this is the moment where Daniel's life changes forever. What happens next will surprise you. Stay tuned. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Welcome back, folks. If you thought things couldn't get any more intense, think again. We're in the thick of it now, and trust me, you won't believe where this is going. If you're enjoying the ride, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and give us a like. Don't forget to share this story with your friends. 2. You want to be the one to tell them about the crazy twists coming up. Now let's get back into it. So, last time we saw Daniel Greenfield go head-to-head with David Mercer. He walked into that coffee shop expecting a confrontation, and boy, did he get one. David didn't just walk away. He left a parting shot, a cold warning that Daniel had no idea what he was getting himself into. The moment David left the meeting, Daniel knew things were no longer just about saving his marriage. The stakes had shifted. This wasn't about Amber anymore. This was about playing a dangerous game with someone who was not just a charming CEO, but a ruthless player. Let's break down what happened next, shall we? Daniel, with his file full of evidence, walks out of that coffee shop with more questions than answers. Sure, he knows Amber's been lying, but David's cryptic warning weighs heavily on his mind. David's words echo in his head. You'll regret this. Was it just a power play? Or did David know something Daniel didn't? Something bigger? Now, Daniel's been playing it cool this whole time, gathering evidence, watching his wife, keeping his cool in front of his kids. But all that changes after this meeting. He's no longer passive. The stakes have just become personal. The next few days are filled with tension that Daniel can't shake off. He's walking around with a storm brewing inside him, trying to stay composed on the outside. But inside, it's like everything's starting to unravel. The tipping point comes one night when Amber comes home late again. This time, Daniel's had enough. He's done playing nice. He's not waiting anymore. When Amber walks through the door, her face lights up like it always does when she sees him. But Daniel isn't fooled anymore. He's seen the cracks in her mask, and he's done pretending he doesn't see them. Amber, he starts, his voice calm, almost too calm. We need to talk. For the first time in a long while, Amber looks at him with something resembling fear. She knows the tone. She's heard it before, the calm before the storm. "What's going on, Daniel?" she asks, but there's a tremor in her voice now. "I know about David," Daniel says, his voice unwavering. Amber freezes. Her eyes widen, and for a split second, Daniel can see the guilt flash across her face before she masks it with her usual charm. "What are you talking about?" she asks, her voice betraying the lie. "Cut the act, Amber." Daniel snaps, his patience thinning. "I know everything. The dinners, the trips, the lies. I know you've been working with him to cover up fraud. I know about the offshore accounts. I know all of it." His voice cracks with raw emotion now, but he's not backing down. He can't. Amber stands there, completely still for a moment, processing what he's just said. And then she laughs. It's a bitter, hollow laugh that sends chills down Daniel's spine. "You've been spying on me?" she says, her voice sharp. "You've been snooping through my things?" "I didn't have to," Daniel retorts. "You made it pretty clear with all the late nights, the mysterious phone calls, and the fact that he's been at our house more than you've been. Don't pretend like I don't know what's going on." Amber's face falters, and for the first time in a long time, Daniel sees the woman he married, the woman who was once honest and loving. But that version of her is long gone. She's replaced by someone who's cold, calculating, and desperate to hold on to whatever she thinks she still has. "Daniel, please," Amber pleads, her voice trembling. "You don't understand. This isn't about you. This is about me. About my future. You've been so focused on your work, on your career, that I've been suffocating here. You don't see me anymore. You don't see us anymore. I needed more. David gave me that." 1,000 emotions hit Daniel all at once. Hurt, betrayal, disbelief. "So, that's it? You're just gonna throw away everything we've built? Throw away me, your family, your kids? For some man who uses you like a pawn in a game?" Amber opens her mouth to speak, but the words won't come. Instead, she lets out a shaky breath, looking away from him, the guilt too heavy for her to hide anymore. For a moment, the room is silent, and in that silence, everything changes. This is where things go from bad to worse. As Amber breaks down, Daniel's mind is racing. The woman he thought he knew, the woman he loved, isn't the same person anymore. And it's not just about the affair anymore. It's about the lies she's told, the life they've been living together that's been a facade. It's about the betrayal, not just of their marriage, but of the life they built with their kids. And just like that, Daniel realizes he can't save their marriage. It's too far gone. But there's something else at play here. The fraud. The company. The money. Daniel's been piecing it together in his head for weeks now. Amber's been covering up David's embezzlement, funneling money into offshore accounts, falsifying documents, and Daniel's the one who's going to have to deal with the consequences of it all. He's been a bystander for too long, and now he's done. So Daniel makes a decision, one that will change everything. He's going to take action, but not in the way anyone expects. He's not going to let David or Amber walk away scot-free. He's not going to let his family be torn apart because of their greed and selfishness. The next day, Daniel shows up at work and does something that completely blindsides his colleagues. He calls a meeting with the board of directors at Riverside Technologies, where he's worked for years. The topic of the meeting? Corporate fraud. The kind that David Mercer has been involved in for years. The kind that Amber has helped cover up. Daniel knows that if he goes public with this, he's risking his career, his reputation, and even his family. But it doesn't matter anymore. He's not going to be the guy who turns a blind eye. When the board convenes, Daniel walks in, cool and collected, like he's in control. But inside, his heart is racing. He starts off by talking about the recent discrepancies in the company's financial records. How project budgets have been inflated, how vendor payments don't add up, and how certain accounts have been moving money into offshore accounts. As he goes through the details, it becomes clear that this isn't just a simple mistake. This is deliberate. This is corporate fraud on a massive scale. And then, the bombshell. Daniel plays the recordings. Amber's confessions. Everything she said about working with David, about covering up the fraud, about helping him embezzle millions from the company. The room goes dead silent. No one can believe what they're hearing. But it's true. Every word. And that, my friends, is where the true cost of betrayal is revealed. Daniel may have been hurt, betrayed, but he's not the kind of guy who stays down for long. He's taking control of his own future, and he's not going to let anyone, not even his wife or his so-called friend, ruin his life. Welcome back, folks. If you're still here, then you're in for the ride of your life. Trust me, this is the moment where everything comes to a head. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, like the video, and drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know how you think this is going to end. The stakes are about to get even higher, so let's not waste any more time. Let's dive back into the action. So, when we left off, Daniel Greenfield had just made a move that no one saw coming. He'd gone public with the evidence he had against David Mercer, playing the recordings of Amber's confessions in front of the board of directors at Riverside Technologies. The room was stunned into silence as the details of the embezzlement scheme, the fraudulent accounts, and Amber's involvement were exposed. Daniel wasn't just protecting his family. He was saving the company from a massive corporate scandal. But here's the kicker, David wasn't done yet. If you thought that moment was the end of the road for him, think again. The tension in the room is palpable as David tries to play his final hand, even with his entire empire crumbling around him. He wasn't the kind of man to just accept defeat. As the board meeting continues, it's clear that David isn't going to sit idly by. He knows his back's against the wall, and he's scrambling for a way out. His face is flushed with rage, his jaw clenched as he tries to hide the panic setting in. But no matter how hard he tries, he can't deny the truth that's staring him in the face. The evidence is irrefutable. The money trail, the emails, the phone calls, all pointing to David and Amber. David stands abruptly, his chair scraping loudly across the floor. "This is absurd," he snaps, trying to regain some semblance of control. His eyes flick to Amber, who's sitting there, pale and trembling. She won't look at him. She won't look at anyone. This isn't the woman who's been running the show. This is the woman who's been caught, and she knows it. "Do you really think you can bring me down like this?" David says, his voice shaking slightly but still carrying the arrogance of someone who's used to getting his way. "I built this company. You think this little stunt is going to end me? You have no idea who you're dealing with." But Daniel doesn't flinch. He doesn't back down. He's seen this act before, the bravado, the attempts to manipulate, to distract. But David's time is up. And this time, Daniel isn't the guy who's going to get intimidated or back into a corner. Here's where the real turn comes. Just as it seems like David is about to storm out of the room, trying to salvage his dignity in front of the board, something unexpected happens. The head of the compliance department, Bernard Whitaker, who's been quietly listening, stands up and addresses the room with calm authority. "David, I'm afraid it's over. We've already contacted the authorities," Bernard says, his voice cool and controlled. "There's no going back from this. Your actions have not only jeopardized the company but violated federal laws. We've already begun working with the SEC, and we have everything we need to prosecute." The words hit like a ton of bricks. The board is silent. There's no escape for David now. He stares at Bernard, disbelief written across his face. He opens his mouth to argue, to fight back, but the words don't come. Instead, he slumps into the nearest chair, defeated. His empire, built on manipulation and deceit, is crashing down around him. Daniel stands tall, not even a hint of triumph in his posture. He's done what he needed to do. His job is over. The truth is out, and now it's up to the legal system to take care of the rest. But the real emotional weight of this moment isn't on David. It's on Amber. She's been silent throughout most of the meeting, her eyes glued to the table, her shoulders hunched in defeat. For the first time, Daniel sees the full extent of her guilt. The woman who'd once been so confident, so sure of herself, is now broken. It's almost painful to watch. She stands up slowly, her movements stiff. I didn't mean for this to happen," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. But no one is listening to her now. The damage has been done. There's no going back for Amber. She knows it, And deep down, Daniel knows it too. This isn't about forgiveness anymore. This is about the consequences of her actions and the lives she's affected. And then, just as Daniel thinks it's over, Amber turns to him. "You don't understand," she says, her voice breaking. I didn't want to hurt you, but I felt like I was drowning. I was just trying to feel something other than this life we've been living. You weren't there, Daniel. You weren't there when I needed you. And David, he saw me. He made me feel alive again." Daniel's heart aches, but he knows the truth now. He's heard enough. The confrontation he'd been avoiding for weeks is finally happening. There's nothing left to say. Amber's words are hollow now. The excuses don't matter. She made her choices, and now she has to live with them. He looks at her, his gaze steady but cold. "You made your choice, Amber. You chose him. You chose to betray everything we built. And no matter how much you try to explain it, I can't unhear what you said. I can't unsee what you've done." The room is silent once again. The weight of the moment hangs heavy, but Daniel isn't looking for sympathy. He's not looking for answers. He's looking for closure. And in that moment, he realizes that it's not just about Amber or David anymore. It's about him, his future, his children, and the life he's about to rebuild. The final decision? Amber doesn't fight back. She doesn't beg for forgiveness. Instead, she simply looks at him, her eyes full of regret. There's nothing left to say. As Amber is escorted out of the room, Daniel stands there, feeling a strange sense of finality. He's done it. He's exposed the truth. He's taken control back from the people who thought they could ruin his life. He's done everything he can, and now it's time to move on. But David isn't done yet. In the weeks that follow, Daniel begins to get word that David is pulling strings behind the scenes. He's trying to salvage what little he has left, trying to protect his image, trying to manipulate the press, trying to make a deal. But Daniel's not letting that happen. He keeps pushing forward, gathering his own allies, building a case that will ensure David pays for what he's done. And that's when the real battle begins. It's no longer just about Amber's betrayal. It's about justice. It's about making sure David Mercer pays for every lie, every deceit, and every illegal action he's taken to get ahead. All right, folks, it's time to buckle up because things are about to get real intense. This is the moment you've been waiting for, where the stakes are at their highest and the players are making their final moves. If you're enjoying the ride so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share this video with your friends. You're not going to want to miss how this all ends. Let's dive right into the action. So where do we stand? Amber's been exposed. David's on the edge of a legal disaster, with the SEC breathing down his neck. Daniel has just played his cards. He's brought everything to light, and it seems like he's won. But let me tell you something. The game is far from over. In fact, this is when the tension kicks into overdrive, and the final twists and turns start to unfold. The first big turning point comes when Daniel gets a phone call late one night. He's been working around the clock, putting the pieces of his life back together, trying to make sense of the mess that Amber and David have caused. His kids are in bed, Amber's gone, and he's alone in his office. That's when the phone rings. It's from an anonymous number, and his gut tells him that this isn't just a random call. He picks up the phone, and there's a brief silence before a voice comes through. It's David Mercer. Greenfield. David's voice comes, sharp and low, almost like a whisper. You think you've won, don't you? Daniel doesn't hesitate. I know I've won. It's over, David. But David isn't done. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Daniel. You think exposing me is the end of the story? You're wrong. You think you've destroyed everything I've worked for? Think again. You've just made things worse for yourself. You've made an enemy out of the wrong person. Daniel's heart starts to pound. He's been expecting this, but hearing it directly from David is a different feeling altogether. The stakes have just gone up. This isn't about business anymore. This is personal. I'm not afraid of you, David, Daniel responds, trying to keep his voice steady. You're done. This isn't just about money or power. It's about justice. And you're going to face it. David laughs, but there's no humor in it. Justice? You really think this is about justice? You've underestimated me, Greenfield. The game's not over. Not by a long shot. I'll make sure of that. And just like that, David hangs up. The line goes dead, leaving Daniel with a heavy silence. For a moment, he doesn't know what to think. But one thing's for sure, David Mercer isn't done. If anything, this just got a lot more dangerous. The next day, Daniel gets a call from his lawyer. The news is worse than he imagined. David's been making moves behind the scenes, trying to manipulate the media, trying to bribe key witnesses, even making backdoor deals with people who could jeopardize everything Daniel has worked for. David is scrambling, but he's still got connections, and he's using them. Daniel isn't going to let that slide. This time, he takes matters into his own hands. He starts making calls, reaching out to people who can help him shut down David's last-ditch efforts. It's all or nothing now. If David can't be stopped, everything Daniel has done, everything he's exposed, will be for nothing. This isn't just about his marriage anymore. It's about taking down a dangerous man who's willing to destroy everything in his path to save himself. And then the real confrontation happens. A few days later, Daniel gets a tip-off from a source within David's inner circle. It turns out that David's planning one last move, a secret meeting with a high-profile investor who could help him save his company, despite everything that's happened. If this deal goes through, David walks away with a clean slate, and everything Daniel has worked for is undone. Daniel doesn't waste any time. He's already made up his mind. He's going to stop David, but not through legal means this time. He knows he has to beat David at his own game. The location, an upscale hotel downtown, a place where business deals are made behind closed doors. Daniel knows David's habits. He knows the type of places David likes to meet, the kinds of people he trusts. This meeting will be no different. Daniel arrives early, slipping into the hotel with the confidence of someone who knows exactly what he's doing. He's got a plan, and he's sticking to it. The tension is thick as he waits in the hotel lobby, watching the clock tick down to the scheduled meeting time. His mind is racing. Is this the moment where everything changes? Is this where he finally takes control? As the minutes tick by, Daniel's phone buzzes. It's a text from his lawyer. David's meeting in progress. It's not too late to stop it. Make sure you're ready. Daniel clenches his fists. This is it. And then, as if on cue, David walks in. He's not alone. There's a group of well-dressed investors with him, all smiling, all shaking hands, all acting like nothing is wrong. They're completely unaware of what's about to happen. David spots Daniel immediately. His face goes from relaxed to tight in an instant. Greenfield, David growls. I thought I told you this wasn't over. Daniel stands up slowly, walking toward David and his entourage with purpose. His eyes are cold, but there's no fear in his stance. He knows what he has to do. He knows this is the final moment. Without a word, Daniel pulls out a file, not just any file, but the final piece of evidence he's been holding back, the smoking gun. This file contains the full scope of David's financial crimes, his offshore accounts, the names of every person David's bribed, every business partner he's manipulated. It's all there, documented and ready to bring David to his knees. David's face goes pale as Daniel slides the file across the table toward him. The investors around them exchange confused glances. David's bravado crumbles. This is over, Daniel says, his voice low but firm. You can't hide anymore. This is all going public, David. Your empire is falling, and you have no way to stop it. The room is silent. The weight of the moment hangs heavy in the air. For a second, it feels like time has stopped. Then, as David looks around at the people who once looked up to him, he knows it's done. There's no escape. No more lies. The final twist. David tries to make one last desperate move, but it's too late. The authorities are already on their way. The evidence stacked against him. He's done. The company he tried so hard to save is crumbling. His reputation, ruined. And Daniel? He's done what he set out to do. Not just for his family, but for justice. And in that moment, Daniel realizes something. He's won. The fight wasn't just about exposing the truth. It was about reclaiming his life, his integrity, and his future. He's walked away from the wreckage, stronger than ever, ready to build something new from the ashes. Alright, folks, we've made it to the final chapter of this wild ride. If you've been with us from the start, then you know this has been a journey filled with twists, turns, and some serious betrayals. But as every story goes, it's time for a resolution. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time to do it. Hit that button and stick around for more of these crazy stories. You don't want to miss what's coming next. And hey, don't forget to share this video with your friends so they can be part of the action too. Now, let's dive into the final moments of this intense tale. The dust is starting to settle. After the explosive confrontation at the hotel, Daniel Greenfield has emerged victorious. David Mercer's empire is crumbling. The evidence Daniel provided is enough to bring down the CEO and his accomplices. The authorities are in full swing, the SEC is investigating, and the pieces of the corporate fraud are falling into place. But it's not just the business world that's being reshaped. This is a story about a man reclaiming his life, his integrity, and his family. And in this final chapter, we get to see where everyone lands after the chaos. Let's start with David. His once invincible world has shattered. The powerful, self-assured CEO is now a man running from the consequences of his actions. His attempts to bribe, manipulate, and weasel his way out of the mess have all failed. The public's response to the scandal has been swift and unforgiving. His career is over, and the money he so desperately tried to protect has been seized by the authorities. David's fall from grace is as swift as it is dramatic. The media, once enamored by his charm and success, now paints him as the villain he always was. The investors who once hung on his every word are distancing themselves, pulling their support. Legal charges are stacking up against him, and the once proud businessman is left with nothing. He tries to fight, tries to turn the tide in his favor, but there's no going back. The weight of his actions, the embezzlement, the manipulation, the destruction of lives, is too much to bear. David spends his final days in the media spotlight, but it's not for the reasons he's used to. The trial begins, and it's a spectacle, watched by millions. David's once pristine reputation is destroyed as the details of his fraudulent schemes are laid bare for all to see. He's convicted and sentenced to a long prison term. In the end, David is left with only his regret and the irreversible damage he's done to his career, his life, and to the lives of the people he hurt along the way. Now let's turn to Amber. After everything has been exposed, Amber is left with the fallout of her decisions. Her life, once filled with luxury, designer clothes, and high-end vacations, is now in ruins. The world she built with David and the lies she told to Daniel are gone. The affair, the embezzlement, the betrayals, it all catches up to her. When the dust settles, Amber faces a harsh reality. She's been arrested for her role in the corporate fraud, and the trial isn't going to be kind. The world isn't forgiving, especially when the public learns of her involvement. Once, Amber had everything she wanted: beauty, charm, a career, and a husband who adored her. Now she has nothing. Her fall from grace is just as steep as David's, but in a different way. She's not facing public humiliation in the same way he is, but her personal life is a wreck. Daniel, the man who once trusted her with everything, has nothing left to give her. The final blow comes when she realizes that she's lost the most important thing: her family. In the end, Amber is sentenced to prison for her role in the financial crimes. She loses everything: her wealth, her career, her reputation, and, ultimately, her marriage. There's no redemption in sight. It's a tragic end to her story, one that's defined by her own selfish choices. The life she once dreamed of is nothing more than a distant memory, replaced by the harsh reality of the consequences. But what about Daniel? Where does he go from here? For Daniel, this is the beginning of a new chapter. After everything he's been through, the lies, the betrayal, the corporate games, he's ready to move forward. Daniel's personal growth throughout this story has been nothing short of extraordinary. At the start, he was a man who trusted blindly, who believed in the goodness of those closest to him. But by the end, Daniel has become someone who's learned the importance of self-respect, integrity, and standing up for what's right. As the story reaches its final moments, Daniel's standing tall, not just as a victor in a business battle, but as a man who's taken control of his own life. He's rebuilt himself, his career, and his sense of self-worth. The man who once thought everything was perfect, the perfect wife, the perfect family, the perfect job, now sees the world with a clearer, sharper focus. He knows the importance of not just the truth, but of the people who truly matter. Daniel decides to step away from Riverside Technologies for good. The scandal, the betrayal, the pressure, it's all too much. He needs a fresh start, and he gets it. He walks away from his old life, his old job, and starts a new chapter in his career. This time, though, he's doing it on his own terms. No more blind trust. No more compromises. As for his kids, Daniel does everything in his power to protect them from the fallout of everything that happened. The divorce is final, and though it's painful, it's a necessary step for everyone involved. Daniel's focus now is on his children, on making sure they grow up in a healthy, supportive environment, far removed from the toxic drama that consumed his life for so long. And now we reach the final moments. Daniel sits in his new office, a space that's all his own. It's not much, but it's his. The phone rings, and for a moment he's startled. It's been a while since he's had any business calls. But when he picks up the phone, it's not business. It's a call from his lawyer. "Daniel, I just wanted to update you," his lawyer says. "David's been sentenced, and things are finally looking good for your case. You've got a future ahead of you." Daniel smiles, a weight lifting off his shoulders. The last of the pieces are falling into place. The past, the betrayals, the heartache. It's all behind him now. He's free. But there's one last thing. A text from his old colleague, Franklin, pops up on his phone. "You did good, Daniel. The company's going to be okay, and so are you. Let's grab a drink soon." Daniel looks out the window of his new office, watching as the world moves on around him. The sky is clear, the sun shining brightly. Feels like a new beginning, and for the first time in a long time, Daniel can breathe easy. He's learned the hardest lessons, but now he's finally at peace. And there you have it, folks. The end of a long journey, with plenty of twists and turns along the way. We saw Daniel go from trusting husband to fearless leader, from naive victim to empowered man. Through betrayal, heartbreak, and scandal, he found a way to rise above it all. It wasn't just about taking down the bad guys. It was about reclaiming control over his own life. And in the end, Daniel learned one of the hardest but most important lessons. Sometimes the best way to move forward is to let go of the past. Thanks for sticking with us through this wild ride. If you like this story, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, and leave a comment with your thoughts. What do you think Daniel's next move will be? What did you think about Amber and David's fate? Let's keep the conversation going. Ready for the next story? Stay tuned and see you in the next video.